always an element of corruption involved. And what do you specifically mean by corruption?
Commissioners, by the nature of organized crime, there needs to be enabling factors that allows organized crime to flourish. In order for that to happen, it's my experience that there is always an element of corruption involved in the perpetuating of these crimes.
And by that you mean corruption within what government spheres? What kind of corruption I refer?
Both private and public space, commissioners.
Okay. Then, General, if we can go to paragraph 7.
I consider myself to be a career detective. Before my promotion to component head, I had an active role in investigating serious organized crime in the Northwest. These days, my role is more strategic than operational. I am responsible for maintaining policy and standards applicable to the SARCI component nationally. I also monitor the performance of serious organized crime investigation units nationally and guide and oversee investigations within this space.
Can I just understand the oversee investigations aspect of it? You have your investigator and you the component head nationally. So how do you oversee an investigation? For example, let's take the matter that you're going to be testifying about. What is your role in that? Because I'm mindful of the fact that there could be elements of interference where, as a head, you may interfere in an investigation, but it is labeled overseeing. So I just want to understand, are there parameters, guidelines into how you exercise your oversight role?
Commissioners, let me first indicate that within my space at head office, I have investigating capacity within all 4 of the sections at head office. So that enables my office to, for instance, take over certain investigations where there's problems, for instance, or where a province is not having the necessary capacity to deal with certain investigations. So it's not something strange for my office to receive a directive to oversee or to take over in its totality an investigation. In terms of the Port Shepstone matter, that investigation was taken over by my component shortly after the incident in 2021.
Your component, but at that time
was heading the serious organized crime investigation component.
You would have heard Advocate Selo saying that there had been some significant developments in the investigation over the past 12 or so months in this matter. So you're saying that this investigation started in 2021 after the theft, November 2021. Developments only, it was only real developments or significant developments, as she said, after your appointment as component head. Is that coincidental?
Well, Commissioner, I don't know if it's coincidental, but I can confirm that there is substantial progress on the investigation subsequent to my appointment. I can confirm that.
And can I ask, this investigation, you said it was taken over by your component. Where was it before that, before it was taken over?
Commissioners, immediately after the housebreaking was detected, the burglary at the Port Shepstone Serious Organized Crime Investigation Unit, the matter was left with the detective service at Port Shepstone. Shortly thereafter, a decision was taken by the then DPCI head, Lieutenant General Lebia, to establish a team to investigate the matter, and then the responsibility to oversee that investigation or the investigation by
paragraph 8.
The primary purpose of this statement is to give evidence regarding the November 2021 theft of cocaine from police custody in Port Shepstone. However, I will traverse other related topics to give the Commission the necessary context to understand the events that transpired in Port Shepstone.
Okay, we then move on to a new topic, serious organized crime investigations. You may continue from paragraph 9.
Thank you, Commissioners. As stated earlier, I was the Provincial Commander for Soki in Klerksdorp Northwest and thereafter promoted to Component Head for Soki nationally. In order to understand what Soki entails, it's important to understand what is considered a serious organized crime. Serious organized crime is coordinated, structured, and ongoing criminal conduct carried out by criminal groupings involving serious offences which, by reason of their scale, sophistication, or societal impact, fall within the category of national priority offences contemplated in Section 17D of the South African Police Service Act, Act 68 of 1995. Serious organized crime is a subset of national priority crime referred to in Section 17D of the SAPS Act.
You may continue.
According to the DPCI's mandate, the Soki component includes, and this is just examples, it's not an all-inclusive list, Commissioner, national priority violent crimes, such as cash-in-transit robberies and trafficking in firearms or explosives, both transnationally and nationally, by organized crime networks. Then the second section is the South African Narcotics Enforcement Bureau, commonly known as SANEP, which deals with all national and transnational drug trafficking offences, detection and dismantling of all clandestine drug laboratories, and other drug-related crimes. In the third section there is the Economic Protected Resources section, which investigates offences relating to transnational importing of non-ferrous metals and tampering with essential infrastructure in organised, complex and sophisticated cases, transnational importing and exporting of precious metals, diamonds and chrome, illegal mining committed in an organised fashion, wildlife trafficking, and then human trafficking linked to organised criminal groups or committed in an organised fashion by land, sea or air.
General, human trafficking falls under economic protected resources. Why is that?
Commissioner, I don't want it to be misleading because it's as if it adds value economically, but it's all about the exploitation of the victims of trafficking in persons, whether it is for slave labor or for purposes of prostitution or other reasons. The reason why it's under economic protected resource is because of the exploitation of the victims. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, General. May I continue?
And then the fourth section within the component is the crimes against the state component, which investigate crimes like, for instance, high treason, terrorism, terror financing, etc.
Okay. Then at paragraph 12, you deal with the prevalence of these various crimes in the different provinces.
The order of prevalence of these crimes will differ from province to province. In the Northwest, illegal mining, illicit drugs, and firearm trafficking are the most prevalent. In Gauteng, illicit drugs, precious metals and diamonds, firearms and ammunition, and cash-in-transit heists are the most prevalent. In KwaZulu-Natal, illicit drugs, CIT, and non-ferrous metals crimes are the most prevalent. And in the Western Cape, with specific reference to Cape Town, illicit drugs, marine life crimes, firearms and ammunition, and gangsterism-related offences are the most prevalent. In an attempt to give the Commission context to how sophisticated organised crime can be, and given that I spent the majority of my career in the Northwest, The best way is to deal briefly with illegal mining in the Northwest Province. The police officials in the Northwest are faced with large-scale criminality by heavily armed criminal groupings conducting illegal mining activities at redundant mining sites or inadequately secured mine shafts. The illegal mining activities are conducted under the control or direction of organized groups or networks who regulate access to mining sites, coordinate the extraction of material, and control its onward movement.
What you refer to as
Sorry,
heavily
General,
armed.
before you-
Thank you, Commissioners. It happened that this illegal mining groupings that get illegal access to mine shafts, both underground and to protect it on surface, are armed with automatic rifles, with pistols, revolvers, and in some instances we even found hand grenades. At some of the scenes we will recover in excess of 10 or more rifles from the perpetrators, as well as sufficient ammunition to continue with a firefight for at least 24 hours. In one instance, we recovered only AK-47 ammunition, 6,000 rounds of ammunition. It goes without saying that it shows us how well equipped these criminals are within the organized crime space. They have logistics, supply chain streams that provide them with food, as well as gold refining paraphernalia that they use both underground and on surface. And then there is always visible and available market to facilitate the onward trafficking, with subsequent money laundering that's taking place on a continuous and ongoing basis.
Thank you, General. Paragraph 15?
13.
15, 1-5.
The extracted material is transported from the mining sites to informal or unlawful processing operations, or introduced into legitimate processing streams. By this, I mean the material is sold to a legitimate refining or processing company with a refining license. I would like to make it clear, Commissioners, that this is not everybody within that industry or all the companies. There are unscrupulous license holders, but there are also honest companies within that space. The material is sold through intermediaries and may ultimately be refined or exported. The proceeds generated from such activities are often handled in cash or through informal channels, which obscures the origin of the material and the financial flows associated with it. Gold is a high-value commodity that can be transported and concealed with relative ease. Once refined, it is generally indistinguishable from lawfully mined gold, which facilitates its integration into legitimate markets. This makes it difficult to trace the origin of the material. The continued demand for gold and other minerals, both locally and internationally, contributes to the persistence of illegal mining activities. Refineries and processors could acquire the illegal material through intermediaries or suppliers who present such material as lawfully sourced. The illegally mined material may enter legitimate refining processes without its unlawful origin being apparent. This could occur if other role players in the supply chain misrepresent the origin of the material, or the unlawfully mined material is mixed with lawful material prior to refining. The refining process itself renders the material indistinguishable from lawfully sourced product, thereby facilitating its integration into the formal market. The proceeds from the sale of the material may then appear to be legitimate income.
General, so here you dealt with an instance where the refinery, the legitimate refinery and processing company is not aware that the material that they are receiving are illegally mined. Are there instances where legitimate refineries and processing companies are aware that they are buying illegally mined material?
Indeed, Commissioners, there's a number of such cases already being dealt with in our courts, or that's currently before courts in South Africa.
Thank you, General. And then insofar as the refining licensing process itself is concerned, is there any involvement there in the organized crime aspect of it, in getting the license issued? So licenses that ought not to be issued are issued to companies.
I do not have any evidence to that effect, Commissioners.
Thank you. Then you say, I now turn to illicit drugs at paragraph 18.
Thank you, Commissioners. Illicit drugs for purposes of my evidence are substances that are prohibited by law. Illicit drugs may also be drugs that are lawfully possessed or used under specific conditions, but which are then possessed, used, or distributed unlawfully. My statement deals only with the former. There are essentially two categories of illicit drugs or narcotics: naturally derived drugs and synthetic drugs. Naturally derived drugs are, for instance, dagga, cocaine, and heroin. And I would also like to include here methamphetamine that's originating from Afghanistan. Cocaine is derived from leaves of the coca plant, which is cultivated mainly in South American countries such as Colombia. The leaves are harvested and then processed to extract a substance known as coca paste. This paste is further refined through chemical processes to produce cocaine hydrochloride, which is the form commonly trafficked and sold as cocaine. Heroin is derived from the opium poppy plant, which is cultivated primarily in Afghanistan. The opium is extracted from the poppy plant and then processed to produce morphine, which is further refined into heroin through additional chemical processes. And this is where I also would like to include then the plant-based methamphetamine that originates also from Afghanistan, Commissioners. Cocaine and heroin enter South Africa commonly through established transnational maritime routes involving multiple countries. Cocaine is typically transported from South Africa via West Africa.
South America.
Apologies for that, Commissioners. Transported from South America via West Africa before reaching Southern Africa, while heroin is commonly transported from regions such as Afghanistan through East Africa like Mozambique and into South Africa. These substances are moved using a variety of methods, including air travel couriers, commercial maritime routes, and overland transport. South Africa functions both as a destination for local distribution and as a transit point for further international trafficking. These activities are generally conducted by organized criminal networks operating across national borders. A common method used globally is called the rip-on, rip-off technique. It is essentially hiding drugs inside someone else's shipment in the container when retrieving them before the rightful owner ever knows. The illicit drugs are placed into a legitimately packed shipping container without the knowledge of the lawful consignor or consignee and are later removed from that container at the port or transit point. This method makes use of legitimate cargo to conceal the transportation of drugs. The process requires the trafficking syndicate to identify a legitimate container with a legitimate consignment from a reputable company. Usually an employee or employees at the consignor would be targeted by the trafficking syndicate. The transaction also requires corrupt officials in the source port as well as its final destination. The officials load bulk consignments of contraband in backpacks, baggage and boxes placed preferably at the back of the container. Sometimes a duplicate seal is left. Should the container be opened, it can be resealed without raising an alarm that the consignment has been tampered with. The rip-off is normally done at its destination. Here again, corrupt officials will break the seal, open the container, remove the contraband, and replace the ripped seal with the duplicate seal that has been placed in the container. In most cases, the port of origin is the port of Santos in Brazil, which is a free port requiring no customs duties from companies using the port. In my experience, in the majority of transactions, the shipper, the forwarding agent, the clearing agent, and the transporter, such as a truck driver, are innocent parties and are unlikely to be aware of any contraband hidden in the container. These parties rely on the information for the legitimate consignment contained in the shipping documents, such as the manifest document, the bill of lading, clearing and transportation documents. Similarly, customs officers will peruse these documents to determine if the consignment is legitimate before releasing the container, none the wiser that illicit drugs have been smuggled into the container. I can perhaps also just here indicate, Commissioners, that SARS Customs do some physical checks on these containers, and then on some of it, obviously not all. And in some instances, they do detect narcotics, and then alert the DPCI to the matter for further investigation. I will deal in detail with seizures that occurred in 2020 to 2022, but I want to deal with one seizure to give the Commission a practical example of the